Hello folks and folkettes, and first of all a big thank you to you all for getting me over 1,000 subscribers. The 1k mark is a huge deal, so thank you very very much for that. I really appreciate all the new subscribers, and yeah, all of you from the past, everyone for subscribing. It amazes me, so a big thank you. Anyway, talking about subs, let's talk about subs. Well, that was a terrible segue. Let us talk about two very interesting ships in the Taiwanese Navy. Now, there are many political things we can talk about here, which I'm not going to get into because, well, I don't feel like endless debate. Now, what I do want to talk about is history. And the history today is that of the ROCS Hoisei and Haipao. Now, you may wonder why I'm talking about two currently active submarines. I don't often cover that much modern military equipment, and this is very true. I try not to because modern things scare me and far too complex for my feeble mind, plus they are often hard to find details about because, well, you know, a machine of war in active combat service is usually hidden away for a good reason. So let us start off on a slightly historical part with an American Tench-class submarine, an improvement over the Gato and Balo class, the most numerous class of American submarine of the Second World War. It also held the distinctive mark of taking down the largest ship via submarine, with that of the Imperial Japanese Navy Shinano carrier being sunk by the USS Archerfish, one of the Balo classes. Of course, there was also the USS Tang, responsible for sinking 33 ships, totaling just over 116,000 tons of shipping, and honestly a boat that could have an entire series of its own, let alone an entire video. The Tench class was a mild improvement of an already impressive submarine, with a range of 16,000 nautical miles, a dive depth of 400 feet, the ability to remain underwater for up to 48 hours, and capable of patrolling for 75 days without coming to port. The class carried a crew of 81 souls, 10 of which were officers, and had a very impressive armament of 10 21-inch torpedoes, 6 forward and 4 aft, carrying 28 spare torpedoes on board. The ship also had a 127mm deck gun, with a mix of 40mm Bofors and a 20mm Oerlikon cannon for air defence, making it a nasty ship to face. 29 of the class were built, but the majority entered service just as the war was ending. That is, of course, the Tench class. The ship went on to have a good service. The USS Tigerin, a ship with its own fair share of history in the Second World War, despite being there for a very short amount of time, managed to cause a stir, saving American aircrew, almost getting torpedoed by a Japanese submarine and sinking an enemy lugger. It was the last Second World War submarine to be serving in the US Navy in 1975. Now you may ask what this has to do with submarines in active service in Taiwan. Well, you see, the Haixi and the Pao are the last remaining World War II submarines in current active service. Yes, you did hear me correctly. Two Tench-class submarines, well, a Tench and a Balo class to be correct, are still in current service and actually make up half of the current submarine fleet of Taiwan. Now, before you may snigger a little, it does show the service life and how good these ships were. Now, of course, these boats have had some improvements over time. The USS Cutlass, the Haixi, and the USS Tusk, the Haipao, would go on to be put into the Guppy 2 class of program. The Guppy was a program where the US Navy improved their ships using captured parts from the Type 21 Electra boat, one of the most advanced submarines to ever be made. The main things that the Americans implemented were the battery capability of the German submarine, improved snorkels, better hydrodynamics, and improved fire control systems, as well as more advanced radar, sonar, and electrical gubbins in the ship as well. The two American ships served until the early 1970s and were sold to Taiwan. Both ships had their torpedo tubes neutered and welded shut, and were to be used as, air quotes here, training vessels. This lasted all of 2 years before the tubes were back in service, stated to be for firing training or dummy torpedoes. However, shortly after, an order came from Italy with modern 21-inch torpedoes. Yes, training torpedoes, of course. Astonishingly, a member of the San Francisco Maritime National Park Association was allowed on board the former USS Cutlass. They said how the ship was in amazing operational condition, and even more amazing was the fact it still mainly used original equipment, such as the Mark 7 Armor gyro compass, something that is as rare as hen's teeth this day, especially a working one. More impressive is the fact that both ships are actually being refitted and modernised, extending their service lives to an estimated 2026, meaning that they will have served for 80 plus years. A remarkable feat for any ship, considering few surface ships manage such a feat, let alone a complex vehicle such as a submarine. This really does just show how good those boats were and how ahead of the time they were back in the day. Now, Taiwan's not likely going to be using these as frontline submarines. They do have some more advanced, slightly younger Dutch submarines in their fleet, and they are looking at building their own. But these two ships will work very well as scout vessels and even be capable of sinking merchant ships if need be. They're not going to be much of a match against a full modern military vehicle, but they still have a use. I hope they never see service, and I hope that they manage to be put into reserve and be put into be allowed to go out with dignity and end up as museum ships, because we do need more museum ships, especially of ships with just such great history to them. It would be a shame to see them both broken up and just disappear. Of course, they could be refitted to their sort of kind of World War II or early Guppy transformation. The early Guppy would make more sense, and selling them to a couple of countries for, museum purposes would make absolute sense once Taiwan gets some more modern vessels. The importance of these two submarines is, well, it's huge actually, because it does help Taiwan defend its waters. Now, I said I'm not going to get into politics too much, and I'm definitely not going to do that, but the threat of those 4 submarines does help Taiwan keep some form of defence in their seas. So even though they are very old, and as I said, you may laugh at World War II submarines going into action, they still have a purpose. Look at how the Iowa-class battleships were still in use and still had a purpose. These things, they may be old, but sometimes they still have a use to them. Military equipment from 70, 80 years ago is still as deadly today as it was back then. All you need to kill somebody is something that fires a bullet effectively and something that you can sit in, or shoot. Everything is still dangerous. I mean, look at how many people are still taken out by unexploded ordnance from prior wars. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Again, a big thank you to all the subscribers, and let me know below your thoughts on these two ships. What would you like to see them happen to them? Would you like to see them still in service until 2030, or would you like to see them being sold to other countries as museum ships? Because boy, would I love to see them in Australia as a museum ship, because we need more submarine museum ships. Anyway, until next time, this is me, Carl Screezilla, wishing you all a wonderful day. Bye bye.